Hey friends, welcome back to Simply Home and Harvest. I'm Jen, and on this channel you will see so much from the home. Really, it's a little bit of everything. And today we are actually going to start by making our own sourdough starter. So many of you have messaged me and asked if I had any videos or any tips on how to make your own sourdough starter. And actually I did a video, it's probably been over a year now, where I showed you how to make your own starter. But because it's been so long ago and because some of you are new to this channel, I thought I would go ahead and redo that video. And there's another reason too. After almost 5 years of having my own sourdough starter, sadly, I didn't take care of it over the summer, this past summer, and it died. And so I need to create another starter for our family. And so I'm gonna actually be making two because I want to do this live over on Instagram, and I couldn't figure out how to do both, where I'm making the YouTube video and the Instagram story. So we are just going to do two starters, and then maybe I'll gift one of them to a friend. I do have a friend that's looking for a starter, so that's probably what I'll do with the other one. Okay, so with that being said, let's get the process started. So the first thing you're gonna need is a jar, a vessel to hold your sourdough starter. And so today I'm going to use a quart size wide mouth mason jar. Now I already have these on hand because I do a lot of canning, so you don't have to use the quart jar. Now I would recommend using at least something that is a quart size, but you could use a glass bowl. You want to use a material that's non-reactive. So glass, ceramic, stainless steel, food grade, plastic container maybe, but anything that you know is going to hold at least a quart, because your starter will expand and grow. And so you want to be sure that you have a vessel that's large enough. So mason jar works well. That's what we're going to use. And then you're going to need a piece of cloth or linen tea towel. That's what I always use. I know there's different methods on what you can use to cover your jar. I just like this because it allows for your starter to capture that good yeast that's in the air, because it's not, you know, a tight woven knit. Air can pass through. So you want something that air can pass through to cover your jar. And then the only other thing you're going to need is some flour. And I would recommend whatever flour you're going to use to make your bread. So I'm going to start mine with an all-purpose flour that is unbleached. That's what I choose to use as my bread flour. So if you use something else, if you want a certain type of flour like whole wheat or pumpernickel or whatever you choose to use for your family, that's the flour that you would want to start with. And then you're also going to need some water, and that's it. Just flour and water. I know there are several ways to make starters, and a lot of people suggest adding sugar or using potato flakes, but the starter that I've made over the years has been perfect for what we've needed it for. It's always done the job, and I've used two ingredients, and that's water and flour, and then that's what we feed it with every day. And who doesn't have water and flour? Pretty simple, right? So stop paying those high prices for that sourdough bread and learn how to make your own, because it is so easy. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm here to empower you, encourage you, and let you know that you can do a lot of things that you pay out of pocket for convenience. And it is convenient to just go to the store and buy bread, but bread is getting to be so expensive. And ways that you can cut down on costs right now is very important. It's very important to our family. So if you can learn how to do the simple task of making bread and making a lot of things on your own that you would typically outsource for, then you can save lots of money. So not only is it affordable, it is also health beneficial. Sourdough, because of the fermentation process, is really good for your gut and your digestive system. Your digestive system has an easier time breaking down the components of a sourdough bread because of that fermentation process. Also, you know what's in your bread. It hasn't been enriched and things added to it and preservatives and all the things that keep it shelf safe. You know what's in it, and just the beauty of that right there is a lot. This video is going to take me about a week or so to make, because I am going to be coming back and updating you every day. So it's going to be a little different in that way, but when you're ready to make your own sourdough starter, you'll have this video to refer back to, and you'll have step-by-step instructions. Okay, y'all, so this is so simple. We're just going to measure out 1 cup of flour, Okay, so I don't make a mess, I'm gonna use this funnel. So 1 cup of flour. And then to that, I'm just gonna add a 1/2 cup of, this is just like a room temperature water. And I got this right out of our faucet. And 1/2 cup of water. So 1 cup flour, 1/2 cup water is the general rule. And then we're just gonna mix this together. Now I like to use a wooden spoon. I don't ever recommend using a metal spoon just because of it possibly reacting. I just read that one time, and so I've always tried to make sure I used a wooden spoon to mix it together. All right, so you're just gonna get that incorporated. It's going to look thick, kind of like a paste consistency, and that's okay. You're just gonna try to scrape all that flour off the sides and make sure it gets all incorporated with that water. Okay, so that's all we're gonna do for the first day. You'll see that it's just really thick right now. And so we're going to cover it with that loose piece of cloth. And what I'm gonna do, you could take a rubber band and wrap it around the top, but I happen to have a ring here, so I'm just gonna stick that ring on top. And that's it. And you'll want to find a pretty warm place to put this in your house. Now, because we are having a little bit of break in the cold weather that we've been experiencing here in Virginia, I decided to go ahead and start this process today because I had to run errands earlier and we are up to 66 degrees. Can y'all believe that? Last week, I think we had like lows down near 10, 11. And the wind chill felt even colder than that. So that wasn't a good time to start it, I didn't think, because our house tends to, you know, get a little bit cooler on days like that. So if you have a cool house, you'll just need to find a warm spot. Our kitchen doesn't stay very warm just because we've got the back door right here. We've got this garden window. And so, you know, it feels like we have a lot of cool spots. I have seen a recommendation to put this on your fridge if that's a warm spot in your house. But for us, the fridge is right beside the back door. So what I'm gonna do is I have this shelf over here that stays very warm, and it's because of this lamp over here in the corner that creates a lot of heat. So if you have a lamp or something close by that you could stick your starter near, that might be a good place for it to warm it up during the day, you know, just sometime. Or you can maybe put like a towel around it. Some people have even suggested like Christmas lights or something to put that close by, just anything that generates some warmth. So I'm gonna place our starter here for 24 hours. I'm not gonna do anything to it for 24 hours. We'll come back here about 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and we'll see what we have. All right, welcome back. It's day 2. And so now it's time to feed our starter that we started yesterday. I just took it off the shelf, and after 24 hours, you really might not see any change at all. You might not see any growth. You may not even see very many bubbles. That's okay. Really, the first 24 hours, you won't see a lot of activity. But I actually do see a little bit of change in our starter. You can definitely see some bubbles there around the bottom. And I think it's starting out to be a really good starter. So what we're gonna do first is we are going to discard half of our starter. You do that because in that way you have less starter to feed, and it will encourage the growth of your starter. So we're going to go ahead and take out a good half of it. You'll see I've already got some in this bowl because I've got another starter that I'm doing over on my Instagram stories, and it's really thick today. It's very much like glue. It will thin out as it expands in the coming days. And you could, you know, save your starter. You could make something out of it, your discard later on. But for now, we're not going to really do anything with ours. And it doesn't have, you know, any of the beneficial fermentation and the good bacteria in it yet. So really, it would just be flour and water, you know? You wouldn't get any health benefits out of it. So I think that's about half right there. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna really repeat the steps of yesterday. I'm going to add in a cup of our all-purpose unbleached flour, or whatever flour you are using. And then I'm gonna add half a cup of our room temperature water. And then we're just gonna stir that up and make sure all the dry flour is mixed into the water, and that's all we have to do. So I'm gonna get that mixed together. I'm gonna cover it back up, put it back up on our shelf here, and then we're gonna come back to it in 24 hours, and we will continue with day 3. See you then. All right, we have made it to day 3, and I want you to look at our starter. So I went ahead and put a rubber band at the place where we left the starter yesterday, and I had that cloth cover on it, but it expanded so much that when I got this morning, it had come up to that piece of cloth and it's fallen a little bit, but let's see if you can get a good look. Lots of activity going on in there today, and definitely a lot of growth. Now, we've noticed that there definitely is a change in the aroma coming from this jar. Typically, it's a sweeter smell, but I've noticed that this one smells a little bit more like an aged Parmesan. And I looked that up, and it said that that can possibly happen when there's a quick growth or a lot of warmth. And our house is very warm right now because today we are in the mid-70s, and we went from an extreme temperature change. I mean, last week there was a high of 29 this time last week. And so it's got increasingly warmer, but today really warm. And so I don't know if maybe the house was warm and I used I used that room temperature water yesterday, and that has caused it to really expand quickly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stir this. We are going to take this down to only a half a cup. So we're gonna discard a lot of this today, and we're only gonna be left with this amount. That's half a cup. And then the discard I will just toss, just because I don't think that it would be ready to use in anything. And there are a lot of recipes that you can use your sourdough discard in, and we'll talk about that later on. But at this point right now, and because I want that smell to change to more of a sweeter, like an alcohol smell, just like a sweeter yeast smell. I don't know if that's the right word, but anyway, a sweeter smell than it is right now. I'm not gonna use that discard. And I think also I might wash the jar out, and see if that will help too. Okay, so first step is to stir our starter. And it's just still very thick, but it does have a little bit more liquid. Now, once we stir this, it will definitely fall a lot. So you won't feel like you're losing a lot of starter, but believe me, even if you had a drop left in this jar, you could still make it grow and expand. It does not take much to do that. All right, so I'm gonna get this measured out and get our jar cleaned, and I'll be back. Okay, so we've got a nice clean jar now. You do not have to clean your jar out. I just did this so that you would be able to get a better look at the starter. We've measured out half a cup of starter. We're gonna pour this into our jar, and then I bet by now you know what the next step is. We're going to add in a half a cup of flour, not a half cup, sorry, a whole cup of flour. Do this so we don't make a mess. And then you're gonna add in half a cup. Then my water is a little bit cooler today. I did not do the lukewarm like I would normally since the house is so warm today. And we're gonna get that stirred up. And basically it's the same thing. You just want, oh, you can't see me. You just want to make sure all your flour is incorporated. Now, here's the important part. Starting today, we're going to 2 feedings a day. So right now it's about 2 o'clock here, and I will probably feed this again before I go to bed. So in about 8 to 10 hours, I'll feed this again. And then typically every 12 hours, you're gonna wanna start feeding it. So on day 4, which will be tomorrow, I will feed it in the morning and then in the evening. And we'll do that for a couple more days, and then we'll be ready to make bread. All right, so next step is to cover this and put it on a shelf until tonight, and then I will bring you back when I feed it again. Today is day 4, and this is what our starter is looking like. Not a lot of growth since last night. However, I am going to pop up a picture and just show you what the starter looked like last night before I did the second feeding for yesterday. Because you remember we started doing 2 feedings starting yesterday. And I'm actually doing another starter for Instagram. And so you'll see the difference in the other starter and this starter. This starter definitely is a healthier looking starter. They both still have that very pronounced aged cheese smell to them. Not the fragrance I'm used to with the sourdough starter. Typically they smell a little bit more sweet. I've been doing the research on it. Says that smell should go away the more you discard and feed. So I'm going to just go with that. But I did notice a lot more liquid on this one. So that could be one of 2 things. First off, it could be the fact that it rose so much yesterday. The house was really warm, if you remember. And then it fell. You know, we discarded a lot of that. And it could be that this is a hooch, is what that's called, developing, which means that our starter is just really strong and it's really hungry and it needs to be fed a little bit more. And we need to pay attention to maybe the flour water ratio, and we need to add a little more flour to our water or not so much water. And then again, it could mean that it is a weak starter. So, you know, you kind of have to play with these things, and it's just a trial and error thing. But hopefully with some tweaking today, we can get this back up and running. So I'm going to remove the lid and just show you what the inside looks like. So you see we have a lot of bubbles. We have some foam that is starting, which is a good thing. That is actually a really good thing. And this starter looks a lot better than my other starter. So y'all are getting the good one. But I'm gonna take our rubber band off and just let you see that a little bit better. And this one actually has a little bit more of that sweetness smell to it. So I'm thankful for that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and discard all but half a cup and maybe a tad less, just so that we give our starter a good chance to grow and absorb that flour and that water and really show some difference before the next feeding. I'm getting ahead of myself. So first thing we want to do is actually, we are going to stir this before we do any discarding. And I always forget that. I get ahead of myself, but we want to make sure that we stir that really well. And yeah, you got to get it past a certain point. It does have quite the odor to it. As long as you don't see any mold or any black, you know, growing in there, you're typically good to go. But like I said, we'll know. We will know in a few days what's going on. But I think just the changing the temperature, moving it, all those things. Okay, we got that stirred. Now I'm gonna measure out a half a cup. So we have our half a cup of starter measured out, and you can see it's bubbling. It's wanting to grow already, so hopefully that's a good sign. I'm gonna change things up a bit, and I'm actually going to move it, our starter, from the mason jar to this glass bowl, which is typically where I store my starter after I've gotten a good growing starter. I normally will store it in this glass bowl. So that's what we're gonna do. And then that way it has plenty of room to expand, and we can stir everything a whole lot better. And then also, you know, make sure that we've got everything looking the way we want. So I use the mason jar just to show y'all, and, you know, use the rubber band on the bottom. We won't be able to put a rubber band on the bottom of this, but we will track it. Maybe I'll take one of these little sticky notes and we'll track it to see what our growth looks like for today. Okay, this is 1 cup of flour. We're using our all-purpose unbleached flour, and then we're gonna add half a cup of water. This is the first feeding for today. We will come back right before bedtime. I will come back, I will feed it again. Maybe I'll get a picture of it, probably not a video that late, and we'll hopefully see some growth. So we've got it all mixed together. I'm gonna cover it with this linen cloth that I've used many, many years. So I'm gonna go back to the way that I originally do it. And what we'll do is we will take a little sticky note, just put it right here so we know that that's where our starting point is. We'll see how much rise we get. Hopefully we're gonna get a good amount. I'm going to place it on the shelf back here, cover it, and we're gonna hope for the best. And I guess see you back tomorrow. Hey guys, it's day 5. Can you believe it? We are already here, and this is what our starter looks like today. Now, I did give it that second feeding last night. It didn't look much different than this when I fed it, but I'm gonna try to show it to you. You can see that we have bubbles and not a lot of growth, but definitely some action going on. So I think we're headed in the right direction, and it's starting to smell better. It's starting to get that yeasty, like sweet smell to it, which I am happier with, because at first it had like I think I had told you guys, like a cheese smell to it, like an aged Parmesan cheese, and it just wasn't pleasant. It wasn't that pleasant aroma that I'm used to from my sourdough starter. So I'm glad to know that it is turning around in that area, and I believe before long we'll be seeing our starters start to double and all of that good stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and we're going to feed this. This is actually our first feeding today, and then I will feed it again probably before bed, and then tomorrow will be day 6, and I'll bring you back for that. So first thing we're gonna do is we're going to stir our starter and just kind of scrape it off the sides there. I hope you're following along, and if you are, you'll have to let me know how things are going for you. Now, you see that it's still that very thick, kind of like slime consistency. So as it starts to break down and that yeast starts to develop, it will become a little bit more pliable and stirrable, and it won't have that sliminess to it. But, you know, we're just starting this process, so that will take time. Okay, so now we've got it stirred. I'm going to carefully pour off all. Actually, I'm going to measure out my half cup first, and I'm going to move you down so you can see. Let's see. Is that good? Right there. All right. Now that you can see, we will measure out very carefully, like I said, half a cup. And because of the way it comes out, you just have to be patient with it. And if you get more than half a cup, you might have to take some out. Okay, I think we're gonna be right on it. And actually, if we have a little less than half a cup, that's okay, because we will probably do better as far as it responding to what we feed it. Okay, so I'm gonna discard the rest of this, and I'll be right back. Okay, so for our first feeding of the day, we are going to put back in that half a cup that we measured out. We will add in 1 cup of flour, and then a half a cup of lukewarm water. And because we have this bigger bowl now to work with, you know, I have an easier time stirring all this together. And that's a good thing to mention too, is to make sure that you get all that flour incorporated into your sourdough, because you don't want you to have any dry spots. You want it all to be wet. And so this bowl is definitely a better vessel to do that in. I wanted to also point out that the smell has gotten better. And I don't know if I said that earlier or not. The smell is not as much like that aged cheese smell anymore. Now it's getting to be a sweeter smell, like a yeast smell, which is what you want. You want your sourdough to have that, as it's fermenting, it will get that sweet, like fruity aroma to it. And the size, you know, it, like I said, it didn't grow too much, but when you see those bubbles, you know that there's activity there. And it might take us a few extra days just because of, you know, the humidity in the house, the temperatures in the house and outside. So we're going to be patient. That's what we're going to learn from this. We're going to have to exercise patience in this process. And that's what I am having to learn. And sometimes I'm not the most patient person, because when you think, oh, I want to make sourdough bread, you want to make sourdough bread. You don't want to spend 2 weeks making the starter. So that's why a lot of people do not do this on their own. They will, you know, find a starter somewhere or buy the bread already made. But you can do this, and you are doing this, I'm sure. So, or I'm hoping anyway. All right, so we got it like we want it. We're going to cover it back up, and we're going to sit it on the shelf. You see my other starter back here, and we're going to leave it. And hopefully I've got the lamp on to keep it warm up there today. because it did get colder. It's no longer in the 70s. Today I think it's in the 40s. So definitely a big change in the weather. But we are going to come back and feed this sometime before bed, probably tonight. And I won't show you that unless I get a picture of what it looks like. But we will be back tomorrow on day 6 and we'll see if we have any change in activity. All right, we're back for day 6 of our sourdough starter journey. Now last night I did something different and I've had this cloth covering it. I think we're gonna have to change it up again today. But last night I put this in my oven and turned the oven light on because we weren't seeing a lot of growth. I felt like that would be a warmer spot for it. And when I pulled it off this morning, I didn't really like what I was seeing. So we have 2 starters. I've got one, that I've been using for Instagram. So if we have to discard this one, we could just use that one and carry on. But I think we're gonna try a little something since we're this is an experiment, right? You'll see that it has can y'all see it has a thickness on top of it, almost like a, just like a thick covering all the way over the top. So what I'm gonna do is try to take that off, get rid of it, stir it a little bit, then we'll go ahead and discard all but half a cup, put it back in and feed it, and just see what it does for the next 12 hours. Because I'm not sure if that's a bubble or something else, and I just want to keep an eye on it. So not as confident in this one as I am in the other one right now, but we're going to keep trying. We don't want to give up at this point. Still doesn't have a, there's no bad smell to it. It actually smells pretty pleasant now. And, I don't see mold or anything growing, so I'm going to try again. All right, so I removed that skin off the top, and it's very interesting. It was almost like it was forming a scab over the top, and I thought, isn't that neat? It's like it's protecting itself to make sure that it didn't completely dry out. I don't know if that's what it was doing or not, but I thought that was kind of neat. So now we have, a little bit left. We've got enough to divide it out and save half a cup, and then we'll just discard the rest. And then we will give it a good feeding. All right, I've got it measured out, half a cup, and I will say that I like the consistency a lot better. It's more like a cake batter consistency today, which is perfect. That's what I'm used to. So that gives me hope that we are heading in the right direction. And we'll just add to this a cup of flour, half a cup of lukewarm water. I'm going to cover it up this time with just a piece of parchment paper. Stick it back into our oven with the oven light on, and we'll wait 12 hours, feed it again, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Hopefully we're getting closer and closer to being able to make some delicious sourdough bread. Okay, we got it covered. Back into the oven for 12 hours. I will see you tomorrow. We're back. Today is day 7. Now, according to my instructions that I have used to make starters in the past, it says to continue 2 feedings on day 6 and day 7 if necessary, or as long as it takes to get a vigorous, bubbly, risen starter. So we aren't there yet. So we're going to repeat the process today on day 7. This is what our starter looks like this morning after its 2nd feeding yesterday. Well, my utensil is stuck from doing the other starter, but you can see not much difference, and again, it's a little bit thicker today. So that might be just from being in the oven. It's still, actually, you know what? It's not that thick. Doesn't have that skin on it like it had yesterday, and it's definitely the same consistency as yesterday, I would say. So really just no change. So it's not growing, but it's not dying. It's just staying still. So we've got to wake it up. We've got to get it going. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and measure out my half a cup, discard the rest, and then I think I'm going to transfer it back to the mason jar and just see if that will help it, because we know the last time we had the good rise was in the mason jar. I'm going to put it back on this warm shelf right above the lamp, and hopefully that will get it going again. But you can see just by stirring it, see all the bubbles that are breaking the surface. So it's bubbly, it's just not growing. But it takes time. And I was actually watching not watching, but listened to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about breads and the difference in like a store-bought bread and making your own bread, and how the store-bought bread, you can buy that in the bag. You could buy day-old bread, and you will have that for a good 2 weeks or so before it starts to mold. But your bread that you make at home, even your sourdough bread, you will see that it only lasts 2 or 3 days, and then it can start to mold. And that's because these are good, pure ingredients, and they break down, which is what they're supposed to do. So that just shows you right there that the bread that you're buying in stores, it's just full of so many preservatives and things that enrich it and keep it on the shelf longer, but it's not good for our health. It's not good for our guts. We're supposed to eat food that has the ability to break down quickly, right? That makes sense. If it's not breaking down on the shelf, it's not breaking down in your stomach. So that is something to think about. So even though it's taken us a long time, you know, what does it say? Good things are worth waiting for. So we're just going to be patient, because we know we're building a good foundation for our health, for our guts, and hopefully, you know, it's going to do its thing. And as I'm standing here talking to you, more bubbles are forming. So that's a good thing. All right, I'm going to get this going, and I'll show you what it looks like right before I put it on the shelf. All right, so there we have it. Back into our mason jar. I fed it 1 cup of flour, half a cup of lukewarm water. I'm gonna put it back up here on the shelf right above that lamp. Hopefully that will warm it up enough throughout the day. And by tonight, I'm hoping we see it up to here. I hope it doubles in size, because that will be a good sign that we can move on to the next process. So, you know, what have we learned today to really appreciate the quality of food? So sometimes things take time, but that's because we want to get the best results. So this is our first feeding. I will see you back tomorrow for day 8, and hopefully we will have some better results and some major changes. Well, if you've made it this far, today is day 8, and this has fallen a little bit, but when I woke up this morning and checked, we had doubles and bubbles. We had a doubled starter, or just about doubled. We had lots of bubbles in here. I don't know if you can see. Oh yeah, you can get a good shot there and see. So we are getting closer. I would say by tomorrow probably we'll be ready to make a loaf of delicious sourdough bread. So what I'm gonna do today is the same thing. I won't show you the process. We're just going to discard all but half a cup, feed it a cup of flour, half a cup of water, and I may not feed it twice today. I'm gonna give it time to really grow, and we'll come back tomorrow and see where we are. Well, guess what? It's day 9, and we are ready to make our sourdough bread. I have already stirred these, and they're already bubbling and going again. This is the one we are using for all those Instagram posts I was making on growing your own starter, and then this is, I think, the one that I was showing you all every day. And you can see it's just been sitting here after being stirred for about 20 minutes or so, and you can see all the bubbles already forming. So it's active, it is ready. Now that I have showed everybody the process of how to make your own starter, I hope you found that that is an easy thing to do. Really, it's just patience, it's consistency, and before you know it, 9 days later, that's not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things. You have an active starter, and sometimes even sooner than that. So now we need to make some bread. So if you've made it this far, congratulations. It's time for you to make your own sourdough bread. I'm not going to have enough time to show you that in this video, but if you'll stay tuned in my next video, we will make our own sourdough bread. It's a very easy, very basic, simple recipe that I know you'll be able to do. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will see you next time. Remember to live simply, use what you have, enjoy the moments you've been given.